In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in black and white emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, and welcome to the season finale of American Black and White. Tonight, we gather not just to close out a year, but to reflect on what 2025 has meant for our communities, our nation, and our collective resilience. This year began with an inauguration of Donald Trump, a moment that reshaped the political landscape and influenced every sector from education and law enforcement to public health and mental health. We witnessed challenges that tested our systems, but we also saw voices rise, communities rally, and leaders step forward with courage and clarity. We remember the stories of resilience from Jason Collins' fight against glioblastoma to the countless advocates who stood for justice, equity, and truth. We honor the progress made in education, the calls for accountability in law enforcement, the fight for health, equity, and public health, and the urgent need for mental health awareness. Tonight, we are joined by four remarkable leaders who will help us unpack the lessons of 2025 and envision the path forward into 2026. Together, we will reflect, analyze, and chart a course for the future. This is not just a review of the past year, it is a call to action for the year ahead. So let's begin our journey through 2025 with honesty, with courage, and with hope for what lies ahead. Let me bring on our members. Our members are going to be Dr. Keyimani L. Alford, Dr. Phillip Neely, Brodderick Roary, and Jason M. Dotson. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Thank you all
Good
for
evening.
being here. And if we could, I'll give you guys each an opportunity to introduce yourselves and let the people know who you are. Let's start with you, Dr. Alford.
Hey, good evening, and thank you so much for having me a part of this podcast of today. I am Dr. Keyimani L. I serve as the Associate Vice President of Student Access and Success at Madison Area Technical College. I also am an author and an entrepreneur, so it's a great honor to be with you on today.
Let's go with Dr. Neely.
Greetings, and thank you for having me tonight. I'm excited. I'm a full professor at St. Leo University, where I serve as director of the Doctor of Criminal Justice program. I'm retired law enforcement, 26 years in the Atlanta metropolitan area. I'm an author. I'm excited. I'm a lecturer, and I enjoy the research of criminal justice and public policy. Thank you.
And let's go to Mr. Roary.
Good evening. My name is Brodderick Roary. I'm the Director of Special Populations with Rosedale Health and Wellness in Dudley Place. I am a public health professional and LGBTQ advocate here in the South.
And let's go to Mr. Dotson.
Greetings, I'm Jason Dotson. I am the CEO for Wellness with Jason Dotson, which we are tasked with where we are charged with the task of reducing medical mistrust among marginalized communities. It's an honor to be here.
Well, you know, guys, I mean, we're here. We've just had a wonderful start, shall I say. I'll just put it mildly and say we had a wonderful start to the year 2025. We've had several things that's gone on that's impacted our communities in many, many ways. And I want to get this started by kicking off this question to all of you guys, and you can go through and everybody get a chance to chime in on this. But let's start with the year beginning with the inauguration of Donald Trump. Can you tell us, how did this political shift shape your field? Let's start with you, Mr. Dotson.
So thank you for the question. And it's an interesting question because it was a shocker to, I think, to all of us that he won, because he already had a challenging year. So the fact that he was re-elected. So right now, he has basically stated, or his health department or his education department has made it where counselors, nurses, social workers are no longer considered professionals. And right now, research tells us that there's a need for mental health services. There's a need for drug and alcohol services. There's a need to have nurses. However, by him electing Linda McMahon to the Department of Education, it's going to be that much more challenging for us to get financial aid to make sure that people are interested or will register to become a nurse, become a clinician. So having him elected was a dark day in my office, a very dark day. No one laughed, no one joked, and it's got more challenging. And each day, it's always something new, something scary.
So, Mr. Roary, can you tell us, how did this affect your industry and the work that you do?
First of all, I'm happy to be here, but again, it was a dark day. And given the fact that his first term, we did not know what was going to happen this time around, but we were concerned about what he would do to public health. And he really has decimated public health. The CDC, the proposed budget right now for 2026 is going to cut $1.5 billion away from HIV funding. And $1 billion of that will also include an impact to CDC. So public health is on the chopping block. He's eliminated a lot of the services that are attached to public health, and they're across the country. A lot of organizations that serve marginalized communities have had to close their doors.
Oh, wow. Dr. Neely, how did this affect your industry?
Well, it was eye-opening, to say the least, eye-opening. And I say that because people say my one vote don't count. And I say votes count. Now we see what we get. And this man didn't lie to y'all. He told us from day one what he was going to do. Look at Project 2025. He talked about it. When you start looking at both of my fields, right? I'm a law enforcement officer first and a policy man. He told us what he was going to do. He just gutted the Department of Justice. He brought in unqualified people to run our FBI. Now America has no trust in law enforcement, no trust in the Justice Department. And look at education. You just pretty much gutted education, right? Students of low income or minority students cannot get grants or loans to get in school anymore. I think Mr. Dotson said it best, or it might have been Mr. Roary, when he said he's changing the criteria, saying now nursing is not a field that can be certified to get financial aid for long term. I might be saying it wrong, but look at other areas of concerns, right? Minority people will suffer behind this. We must win the midterm. We must vote. We must get each other educated. We must get each other knowledgeable about what's happening. It changed my field drastically. I see it in local law enforcement. I see it in state law enforcement. And God knows we see it in the federal law enforcement system. Patel is lost. And I say in 2026, Patel will be gone. Trump is even tired of him. The Republicans are tired of him. They're seeing what he's doing. He's abusing the system. Now, we start thinking about this, and I'll close on this and say that we have to tie this gap by saying it's up to us to get out in the field as Black men to educate our people about why it's important to vote, why it's important to elect good officials to represent us, not just putting people in office because of popularity.
Right.
Think about, they criticize Biden. Biden did something no other president in history has ever done. Eliminated student loan for not only Black folks, all folks. Think about it. A lot of people out of debt because of Joe Biden. This man turned around. Not only is he going to enforce student loans, he's looking at now gun assuring people who can't even afford to pay because they don't have a job, taking their state income tax because they hadn't paid their student loans, but they don't have a job because they're depressed, they're marginalized. and they are suffering right now. So
Yeah.
I would say that we have to open our eyes and understand what we've gotten ourselves into. Now the focus is having shows like you have right here on this podcast of how to change this narrative, how to change this narrative and get it to a positive from a negative.
Dr. Alford, how does this affect your industry?
So this is a wonderful and an interesting question all in itself. So I sit in the seat of a practitioner and then also a higher education leader. So understanding as far as the first administration, Trump administration, and how there were individuals that were not qualified in seats to lead major departments within the government, one began to tell us of what his thought pattern was, and then understanding the second administration that he is currently in now, it became more of an understanding of knowing specifically that he knows the ins and outs of what to do and what to do quickly. And the reason why I say that is within the first 30 days of his administration, there were multiple amounts of executive orders that were launched and signed that in my industry, as far as in higher education, it created an upheaval when it came into programs like TRIO, when it came into the Department of Ed, having Linda McMahon be the Secretary of Education and sitting in the seat where she has no history or insight as far as what it truly takes in order to lead an organization of that aspect of it. But I think also understanding the grander scheme of it is the cuts and the layoffs and what did it do, one, to employees, but then also to the students that were impacted. And this is within the Department of Veteran Affairs. This is with the Department of Education. This is within the TRIO programs. This is with National Science Foundation grants. Just thinking about the breadth of the impact that he had on this administration and truly what it does. And it does, as some of my panelists have said, impact as far as our marginalized populations to really dismantle what has been built in order to give us access and opportunity within the United States and within laws in order to help to level somewhat of the playing field. We know we're not always going to be ahead based off of how the country is designed, but the positive steps that it has taken in order to give us some opportunities as far as for us to be able to move forward, basically is now beginning to be unraveled, or it has unraveled. And from sitting in my seat from a practitioner lens, specifically within higher education, having staff leave institutions and leave jobs because of the uncertainty of this work, I've saw so many colleagues across the country from the different associations, organizations that I'm a part of, leave the profession because of this administration. And these are talented individuals. These are people that's doing meaningful and good work. But to leave an industry or an area because of who's in leadership says a lot. And it also creates an environment and a culture where we don't know what's going to happen next. And that level of unrest basically has created that opportunity where it definitely sits somewhere where we have to be able to navigate that. So that's kind of where we are when it comes into as far as where I sit in my particular area.
So if I could ask Dr. Alford, how has, and I'm sorry, I wanted to ask Dr. Alford because he hit on something that really hit my attention. How has DEI affected your organization? I know in mine, we took a big hit.
Yeah, so I'm a part of course, institution. I'm served at a large public 2-year institution. But then, of course, I am connected to 4-year institutions and then also state, regional, and national organizations as well. And what I have saw is across the spectrum, institutions have now taken this big long laundry list of terms that are considered to be against as far as what we stand for as an organization, and has shifted as far as the narrative of what we say as belonging, inclusion, diversity, in order to protect as far as the resources that are basically given based off of grants or institutional funding. And it created an opportunity where institutions basically are now redesigning as far as what the work that they're doing, and trying to take away these buzzwords so that they don't feel that they're jeopardized, like a Harvard or Princeton or Yale that was attacked because of utilizing the language. I had a conversation probably about 3 weeks ago with a regional association of financial aid administrators, and we're having similar conversations about that. And we're not even necessarily connected to the federal government or receiving funding from the federal government, but the institutions that we serve are. So it's a domino and a ripple effect that's impacting this based off of what is considered to truly be supporting the diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging type of efforts that are occurring on our campuses. And I have also saw institutions completely remove DEI areas within their institution because of the fear of it, but then also not wanting to be targeted based off of this administration. Excellent question.
Yes, sir.
I want to do a follow-up and just get you guys' opinions on this. And this follow-up is based on my actual experience itself, being a former investigator with the United States Department of Labor. And that is when Jason mentioned about the nurses being stripped of their professional title and being made just a regular employee. What I think a lot of people don't understand about that is in 29 CFR, that part is part 516. That in itself has got to be rewritten because of this. Now, in breaking down that status, what I think a lot of people don't get, which I would like to hear you guys, give me some feedback on, is that there's already a shortage of nurses. So now, if they're going to do something like that, that means that in that pool, they're going to be able to use these people in ways that you will not imagine. Because you have some hospitals that use what they call the 80-20. And so if they use something like that, what that means is the pay structure totally changes from what you're used to in being a professional. And when we go over to what Brodderick had to say about the funding that's being taken away from the HIV and AIDS programs that have been running for God knows how long, and with America footing the bill with the R&D, but our people here not actually having the actual access to what they are considering now is to be a cure, where other countries are the benefactors of that. How can we fix that? Let's start with you, Mr. Dotson.
How can we fix that? Interesting question. I like what the nurses are doing right now. And I think Dr. King said it best. In order for evil to triumph, good person, he said good man, must do nothing. The midterms are around the corner. And one thing we have great going in this country is we have 3 branches of government. And we can always challenge it. Trump, yes, he can issue as many as executive orders as he like, but they can be challenged. And I love what the nurses are doing. But what I don't like is that it's not all the professions coming together. It's just not the nurses. It's the counselors. It's the drug and alcohol counselors. If you look at these professions, it's interesting. Once it was identified that Black women were the most educated population in this country, it just started going after those professions that are dominated by that field. What can be done is you just don't sit still and stay quiet. You reach out to your elected officials, you rally, you talk about it, you continue on using social media, have your friends promote about it. Things can change, but what we cannot do is just stay quiet and say, oh, this is just it, or this is just how it is because he's the president. No, this is not an autocracy. This is a democracy. There are 3 branches of government. We have power. We have power, and we have seen what this can, what our power can do, what our voices can do if we come together, if we mobilize, if we use social media as a tool to educate and inform people and mobilize them, versus looking at the latest TikTok fight. We can change this if we come together, like this podcast right here, talking about it, and those who are watching this podcast. But getting out there and talking about it, and we've seen this. We've seen this with the Epstein files. At first, Trump didn't want to talk about it. Then Elon Musk said he's in the Epstein files. And then we started seeing a movement happen. Getting people out there to talk about what's happening. Nurses are important. Counselors are important. Especially right now, people are losing their jobs. People are stressed. People are going crazy. We need our counselors. We need our nurses. And we need to respect these professions. Right? And we need to advocate for these professions. If you stand still because they're not attacking you, eventually they will start coming after you. Stand up, speak up.
Mr. Roary, do you have any comments or suggestions as to this situation?
I'm with Mr. Dotson. We're going to have to mobilize. It's going to be an uprising of professionals. We're going to have to come together and galvanize the community, especially those that have been impacted the most. The work that I do, we have a clinical side. That's going to impact. I'm concerned about the changes that will happen. That people aren't be able to become nurse practitioners, regular nurse that serves community as a whole. What happens when the nurse practitioners are no longer available to serve communities, especially those underserved communities? I was born and raised in rural South Carolina. I worked at the Phillip Qualified Health Center. The bulk of the staff was made up of nurse practitioners. What happens if they go away? That's going to impact care. And a lot of times, it's people of color and marginalized communities that are impacted the most. If we sit still and don't do anything, it's going to take away a valuable resource that is needed across this country because they're already going after healthcare. They did not vote to continue the subsidy for health insurance. Today is the last day. People are going to lose their health insurance. Millions of people are going to lose their health insurance. We can no longer sit around and allow this man to think that he is a king. He's running this country like he's a king. Not even a dictatorship, like he's a king. He actually thinks that we're in England and that he's running the country like a king and nobody can stop him. We have to come together. The midterm elections are so important. If we don't do anything in the midterm elections, if we sit around and don't do anything, it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Dr. Neely, what are your opinions on this?
I say we got to change the Willie Lynch mentality. We got a lot of black folks. We got a lot of minorities that saying, well, it's going to be all right. It ain't affecting me. But whether it affects you or not, it affects all of us. You know, I was talking to Dr. Alford earlier about DEI. This is all about DEI. Marginalizing the LGBTQ community, marginalize the black community, marginalize the Hispanic community. And how is he doing that? Through his immigration policy. Let's get rid of them. Get everybody out of here and make this a totally supreme society of white folks or those that have and have nots. You've seen it from Tyler Perry, the haves and have nots. So I said we got to get these buzzwords and change the narrative. And how do we change the narrative, right? Social media is good. We got to get on national television, national syndicated radio with Al Sharpton, MS, what is MS Now, Fox. Go to Fox. I was hoping Fox called me. I'll tell him how I feel. I ain't scared. What are you going to do to me? You know, take a job. I've been fired before. It ain't nothing to me. I'm going to always stand up. I'm a policy man. So how we get ahead of this, we got to change the policy. We got to make sure we revert this policy on DEI. It affects more than just marginalized people. DEI affects a lot of people. Well, he don't realize it affects a lot of white women. Exactly. Look at them in the federal government. They sitting at home now because of his policies. You know, they want us to stay, as they say, Brother Alford, as they say, Brother Roary, Brother Dotson, they want us to stay high. They want us to stay drunk and lost.
Yeah.
We got to change the mindset of our youth. I'm glad now we got young men, young women getting into politics, leading the state General Assembly, leading the federal General Assembly, getting in the House, getting in the Senate. Young people. Look at those 2 kids up in Tennessee, what they did.
Yes.
Everybody said they crazy to stand up against them folks. They got thrown out, but guess what? They threw them out and they were reelected the very next term in the special election.
Yes,
that just goes to show we fight, we win. But again, you know my motto, Mr. King. We got to fight, but we can't fight with our fists no more. That's what they want. We got to put down our fists and start fighting with our mind, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. That's how we beat them, sir.
Yes, sir. Dr. Alford, do you have opinion on this?
Yeah, so I echo everything that has been stated. I think the other thing that I do want to amplify is, of course, we want to mobilize. We want to bring folks together. And I think the other element of it, or I say the other side of the coin, is understanding where this message needs to be. And specifically getting in front of the people who might not feel that they have a voice, and allowing them to understand the power that is built in as far as in the 3 branches of government, and getting them to understand that just because we do have a president that is in office, he does not have 100% autonomy in order to do whatever he wants to do, whenever he wants to do it, however he wants to do it. And if we can get in front of their people in order to understand that and truly educate them based off of that, it'll help to change the narrative. Because I hear a lot of times, especially from our younger generation, is I'm not voting, or I have not voted because my vote isn't going to count. It doesn't matter. So we can basically change that and allow them to understand that element of it, then it can contribute to better results that allows us to eradicate what's happening now. The other aspect that I want to comment specifically on, as far as the healthcare aspect of it. So with me being in a 2-year technical college, a lot of the work that we do is working with businesses and within the community in order to address a disparity within the education field, and then also within the workforce. So I think another aspect of it to strengthen the attack on healthcare is to be working with our hospitals and to say, all right, we're an institution of higher education. We understand that there's a shortage here. These are some of the challenges. How do we greater partner with you in order to address what is needed in order to shrink as far as the gap that's out there for nurses, for doctors, those in the medical profession overall, because that is some of the work that we do now. And it helps to understand that aspect of it, because community college students, in our cases, we're doing RNs, LPNs, things of that nature, partnering with 4-year institutions and other graduate type of institutions, and building those relationships with those institutions or organizations, companies within our communities, helps us to train our communities for those who's going to go back into the community. So that's a huge distinction when it comes into a community college. We're not basically training people to send them off somewhere else. We're training people to go back into our actual communities that we're living in. So doing that partnering and then building as far as that awareness up front, I think will also help to address the whole healthcare aspect of it that we are seeing now that's arising due to the administration.
So, Mr. Roary, can you tell us, in as detailed or however you can explain this, can you tell us, how did 2025 shape public health priorities?
It shifted everything. With him dismantling public health, with him gutting the CDC, high officials at the CDC, all of them have resigned. They have left and taken other jobs. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Before moving back to Charlotte, I worked in Atlanta for 2.5 years. The health department in Atlanta lost their funding. You're talking about 55 people that lost their job in reference to public health initiatives. HIV in Atlanta is like a third world country. That's realistically. It's a realistic data shows that. I lived it, I worked in there. That's across the country. With him eliminating all of the services and funding associated with HIV, it's going to push us back. All the work that we have done over the 40 plus years, we're going back. It's going to increase. HIV infection rates are going to increase drastically. HIV in the South is like the house is on fire. Most of the HIV in the country is found in the South. It's not in larger metropolitan areas. It's in the South. We're talking about Texas, South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, Louisiana. All these areas. It's going to impact it all the more. I see it every day in my work that I'm doing. We're concerned about how we're going to continue to support our testing initiatives. So, and as I stated before, organizations that serve underserved communities, especially in public health, they're closing their doors because they can't stay open because they've lost their funding. A lot of our work is driven by funding. It's driven by funding. You're talking about Ryan White. You're talking about funding from the CDC. We don't even know if they're going to impact Ryan White. Ryan White is the funding that serves individuals to provide them access to healthcare, the medication. HOPA, housing opportunities for people living with HIV. We don't know if they can continue that funding or gut it. People might be housing. Housing is healthcare. Not for just people living with HIV, but many marginalized communities. Housing may impact housing.
Wow. And, I think that as we think about that and knowing that infections were already on the rise, but in just thinking about the thing that you mentioned earlier about subsidies not being renewed, which means we'll know officially as of midnight tonight if there's anything in play or if anything has happened. So if that does not get renewed, then I'm assuming what you're saying to us is that programs like yours and those all over the country that serve the underserved and marginalized communities when it comes to healthcare to help to keep people at least at a livable level and pace in life is going to be cut off.
Right. The organization I work for, we pay health insurance premiums for a lot of our patients. We're already seeing that. They're going to double. As an organization, I can give an example. I was on a text message thread. We have a text message thread for senior management. My colleague, she pays the premiums. She paid the premiums for January. If they don't do anything, we can't afford $18,000 a month for insurance premiums.
Right.
So that means if they don't do anything to change the subsidy, to put it back in place, we have people that will lose their insurance. And we have to find other means to assist them. If they don't qualify for Medicare, they have no coverage. And people living with HIV, a lot of them have comorbidities.
Yeah, exactly.
The HIV is under control, but you may have heart disease, kidney disease, other things associated with it.
Wow. Dr. Neely, can you tell us what lessons, as from a law enforcement perspective, what lessons did 2025 teach us about accountability?
The public service is suffering because right now, we all know that public service is a thankless profession at this point. Nobody cares about the police. Nobody cares about fire, EMS, or any other public service workers until they are needed. And once they're needed, they all want us. Let crime start to rise. People want public service. They want law enforcement. Let HIV diseases, like now we got the super flu going in Atlanta. People want nurses. They want doctors. Let gunshot victims continue. They want ambulance service. They want fire patrol when we have these fires occurring inside of these local areas. The lessons I've learned is that we got to stay awake. I think we've been sleeping too long. And as a public servant, we have to eliminate race, religion, and politics because they have infested our profession like a cancer. They're eating us from the inside out. That cancer is killing us. Can you imagine you roll up on the scene as a law enforcement officer and you make the decision whether you want to deal with this person because they're a Democrat, Republican, LBGTQ, straight, queer? Doesn't matter. But that's what police officers, law enforcement officers are faced with right now. Oh, they're just another old poor black guy. And I just see it all the time in my profession. I think it's getting worse now when they say, well, she's just a prostitute. Who cares? She's a human. She's a human, whether she's prostituting or not. That's how she make her money. If that's her way of making her money, let her make her money.
Right.
You get immigration. When they ask, I got people now asking, are you Democrat or Republican? Why? I said, I'm American. That's what law enforcement officers are. We're supposed to be neutral. We're supposed to be unbiased. But you tell me you find a neutral, unbiased law enforcement official right now in 2025, going into 2026, and I'll pay you. They all got their own biases. They all are influenced by race, religion, and politics and this mess we got going on. It has changed the profession. Think about January the 6th. Can you imagine going back to work as a military employee, as a law enforcement officer? You go back in the roll call and you see the guy, same guy you saw out there allowing other cops to be hurt, other people to be injured, and you're a law enforcement officer, you sitting in roll call laughing. I got a problem with it. It taught me a lot of lessons. First lesson it taught me is to keep my head up and wake up. They said, do thy duty, that is best, and leave unto God the rest. Lord, I'm calling on you.
Yeah, I know that's right. I know that's right. Mr. Dotson,
Yes.
how did 2025 reshape mental health priorities?
Well, listen to what everyone's saying. People are losing their jobs. People losing their health insurance. People are watching disturbing videos on social media of ICE going and terrorizing their community.
Mm-hmm.
People are exposed to images or text from the Epstein files. So think about it, all the information coming to you and having to process all of that. But we just learned that Trump just said, you know what? Counselors are not professionals. Nurses are not professionals. We're already overworked. We are overworked. I'm working 7 days a week. My colleagues are working 7 days a week. We are exhausted. We are tired. It's getting to the point where it's just sad. It's just sad. Unfortunately, I mean, we haven't seen budget cuts. However, with this insurance that's taking place tomorrow, people lose their coverage. That's how I get paid. It's through insurance premiums, insurance payments. If people cannot access healthcare, if people cannot access mental health, and then you go and you talk to your friends, or you have no one, you're isolated, and then what happens? You take matters into your own hands, and then you go and engage in criminal activity, engage in a risky behavior, and you put yourself at harm. You also put others at harm. And with Black and brown communities, they just now starting to trust their clinicians. Medical mistrust is prevalent within the Black and brown community. We've been harmed for centuries, and now we're seeing it. We're starting to come back. However, the whole idea of what happens in my house stays in my house. We don't talk about trauma, so people are not getting the help that they need. Just pray about it. Everything that everyone's talking about is basically we're all affected by it. We're all affected. It's not a Black thing. It's not a white thing. It's not an LGBT thing. It's not a straight thing. We're all affected by it. Mental health is real. And there are not enough soldiers out there. There's a waiting list for people to access a clinician. And we're tired and we're exhausted.
Dr. Alford, can you tell us what challenges did students face in adapting to new learning environments?
So, I mean, ultimately, learn as far as being able to process and come into the higher education field, understand as far as some of the challenges that one, COVID basically launched for us. It really allowed us to evaluate as far as how students are learning now, and then also to really try to understand as far as what their preferences are. Um, so prior to COVID, and I'll transition over into your question, prior to COVID, a lot of institutions of higher education basically were providing many of their education in person. Yes, you had some institutions that provided online education, but there was a vast aspect of true education happened when it was a face-to-face type of interaction and engagement. COVID allowed that to shift, and when that shifted, it brought about as far as different situations that surface. You ran into food insecurity situations, ran into mental health challenges, you move from the whole aspect of an academic setting and looking at academic support to a well-rounded holistic support structure within institutions, where institutions can no longer just look at what is needed for you to be successfully when it comes into the academic rigor of your particular program, but now what's going on in your life that is creating your situation that's not allowing you to be able to study, to be able to focus, to be able to provide food on your table, to be able to have access to emergency funding. So all of that plays into the fact as far as the way students are learning. And how they're able to learn because they're not just coming in like the traditional 18-year-old student into our institutions and specifically thinking about what is needed for tutoring or what is needed for textbooks. It's so much bigger now, and there's a lot of focus on institutions as far as what do we do in order to be able to support the students and be able to give them an opportunity that they can learn in the various contexts of that. So it moved from asynchronous learning to both asynchronous and synchronous learning and creating those hybrid models within our institutions in order to be able to appeal to that because life is lifing, as they would say. And it's creating those opportunities where students are indicating are coming to our institutions and saying, you know what, I have to work an extra 20 hours or I have to work 7 days a week because I have all of these other factors that are going on within my life. How can this institution now be able to support me in my learning opportunities? So is it an all online program that still gives them access to the educational elements that's required for that program? Or is it other elements as far as fast paced components of it? Because in a traditional aspect that I'm pretty sure many of us understand is usually you think about a semester, 16 weeks, 18 weeks, the student comes to the institution and they're taking their classes. That has all been evaluated now where institutions are looking at 4 week sessions, 8 week sessions, 12-week sessions, 10-week sessions, 16-week sessions, quarter sessions, in order to be able to address the way students are learning. Now, it comes with a different complexity of how rigorous that curriculum becomes, because, of course, if you need to learn 16 to 18 weeks of content in 4 weeks, that's a lot. But it is basically amplifying as far as the way that we have to approach education based off of the needs of the students, but then also addressing what the students' lives are. I think the other aspect of it is understanding too, who are the students that are coming to our institution. There's an enrollment cliff that's happening now where the high school graduation population is basically on a downward spiral. And we now have to look at the 4.2 million individuals that are out there that has some college but no degree. Right. And really try to understand the larger aspect of it and how are we going to be able to reach that adult population in order to create program that has that short-term credentials that allows them to be able to be trained, skilled, and into the workforce so that they can earn living wages. So that's shifting the whole dynamic in somewhat of the partnerships that I even had conversations and mentioned earlier as far as with organizations and businesses within our communities in order to get that upskilling. Because there is, and it has been an ongoing conversation within higher education for many, many years, and that is the value of education. And what does it truly mean? We all know, I believe, that education is valuable, but what are the ways, in the sense that we can administer education that truly brings upon that value? And I think we're seeing a lot of it within the tech field, where you have short credentials and certifications that people basically are making more than folks that have college degrees based off of these short 6 week certifications based off of a particular skill. So that's changing the whole dynamic now as far as how we educate students and what the students actually need when it comes into higher education overall.
You know, what you just mentioned is so key because, actually, I have to say that I think that that's a regional thing because I do know that very same process that you mentioned. I know that they're doing that in Pennsylvania, and those folk without college degrees are thriving big time with these six-figure jobs.
Mm-hmm.
No college education, but they went and got that certification that you're talking about. So
Yes, sir.
apparently, that's also a big thing in the Midwest. But the place that we would think most where this would be taking place is here in the South, and it's not happening here in the South. And again, I think that's again about that old Confederate thing about losing that war, whatever you want to call it, is that the repression is real, but we don't have people fighting that are doing the real legislation that should actually be out there, campaigning for this and making this come to fruition. Some places are
Mm-hmm.
trying to implement that, but that comes with a lot of tape. And so the thing is, where you are, you're in Wisconsin, right?
I am, yes.
So in Wisconsin, what are some of the things and how did you guys actually get that implemented to actually bring that to light?
Well, let me back up to the reference as far as the South and then in a regional aspect of it, because I think you're going to see in the South as far as what you are particular, as far as seeing and participating now in, because legislation is out there right now for Workforce Pell. So
Right.
Workforce Pell is a program in order to provide short-term credentials for students who have the highest need. Often, the highest need in some cases are our marginalized, disadvantaged students of color in some cases who do qualify for the Pell Grant. So it'll be those students that have that zero student aid index or negative 1,500 student aid index. And then allowing them to receive Pell Grant for those shorter term credentials. So that is going to draw people into those particular spaces in those credentials in order to be able to address that. So you might not see it now,
Mhm.
but come July 1 of 2026 is going to shift because a lot of institutions who are basically looking at those populations of students
Mhm.
who have some college credential but have not or have some college credits but no credential, they're going to be coming back because they're going to start hearing about this. And how do I get this short term 16-week credential based off of the eligibility that I have? And you're going to see a huge spike. And it's going to get people back it's going to get people into the workforce to be upskilled and then also building some of those partnerships specifically with those businesses. Now in Wisconsin, overall, of course, with me being in the 2-year college space, we're looking at it or have looked at it because it's very important for us to build those partnerships with our businesses within our communities. So it's having those conversations, sitting at the tables with the leaders, CEOs of organizations, companies, community based organizations, things of that nature to say, all right, what are your needs? And based off of your needs, what can we do in order to support it? Now, it might mean having existing programs that we have in order to support students and those organizations, or it could be creating
Mhm.
new programs, new degree programs and things of that nature in order to be able to address that particular need. So it's more along the lines of strategy, partnership, and collaboration. One instance to bring in the academic component of it, but I think it's also the hands-on experience when it comes in these particular programs and these partnerships, because once the students get educated, we need to be able to deploy them into the spaces in which that gap or that shortage is. And that's how we have shifted and moved in that. And I think the other thing is we've also built partnerships with four-year institutions. In order for that student that does has that aspiration to get a four-year degree, how do we build those 1+1s, 2+2 programs in order for them to get an associate's degree from us and then transition over to a four-year institution and continue it over in order to get that particular degree. So it's those elements. So it's a lot of different plates that are spinning up in the air that's going on at the same time. But that's how we're addressing it. And those models are being adopted across the country. So it just didn't stop with us, but it's being adopted across the country. And a lot of people are being pulled to the table in order to have those conversations.
Dr. Neely, is the institution that you work at, are they looking at doing anything of the sort like that with these kind of programs?
Yes, sir. We are. We really building our internship programs, for undergrad. But mainly for me, I teach in the graduate program. So I hadn't taught undergrad in a long time, but I was an undergrad chair for about 5 years. And we focused on 3+3. So we had a 3+3 program where they get the undergrad degree in 3 years and they go on and get the master's degree. And that give them that 1 year. So that's 3+3. They give them 4 years for the bachelor's and their undergrad, which would be the master's and the bachelor's degree. So we had a 3+3 program and also our law program. So in the criminal justice program, we had a 3+3 was focused on our law program. They do 3 years undergrad instead of 4. That 4th year, they go to law school, finish their first year there, and then they finish up in law school. So we have a lot of innovative programs. But one of the things I was going to ask Dr. Alford, because what I've noticed since COVID, I think right now education has been diminished. They're lower in education because we're putting too much effort to me. And Dr. Alford, you can tell me this because you work more with the undergrad level than I do. But I notice in our undergrad, grad, and doc levels, we're putting too much effort on retention. Don't fail the student. Do all you can to save the student. Some of these students don't deserve to move forward, but we're moving them because if we fail them, they can't get financial aid. And most of these schools, especially the small community colleges or small, what I call private colleges, 4-year, they're focused on numbers because there are no numbers. They are student driven. Unlike the big institutions like University of Georgia, Florida State, they're state schools. They get money from the state. I'm talking about these small colleges. Like I went to Clark. At Clark is student driven. If there's no student, there's no money coming in. So they got to keep those students. And I'm not saying Clark is one of those schools. I'm just using that as an example that when you find these schools that are tuition driven, they focus more on retention and have too many retention efforts and not enough efforts on keeping that rigor high and tight to make sure that we don't become a diploma mill. And that's one of the things I'm concerned about with my institution, that I don't want it to become a diploma mill while we're saying so much effort on retention. And let's focus on knowledge, skills, and ability. So when you get out there, the degree will mean something to you. Dr. Alford said that, and that's why I brought up, he talked about how his school is focusing on building those students so they can get from the 2-year college into the 4-year college, and they're being that mentor and that guide, that anchor to get them over there. And that's what we got to get back to. I think universities are falling away from that. If you look at now the rate we're going, cutting financial aid is one way of stopping our learning. Think about in the old days, they didn't want the slave to learn. So not just Black people, they don't want the marginalized communities to have the knowledge that we need in order to grow. Why? We become too powerful. I hate when I hear a man tell me, we've overcome, we've made it. We ain't overcome nothing. They have taken away affirmative action. They have taken away DEI. They are taking away the status of the Black strong politician up top. And they're breaking us down every single day. And if we don't get back to it, getting into our head with knowledge, skills, and ability, we're going to lose everything. That's why I'm thankful for you tonight, putting on a panel like this, bringing on a professional like Dr. Alford. I looked up his credentials on LinkedIn. Powerful man. Dr. Roary. I'm calling him doctor. You honorary, sir. looking at his credentials, powerful man in the community, doing things other people don't want to do, focusing on people that we want to throw away, LGBTQ community. We want to just throw them away. What they say, we're going to stop research on transgenders. What happened when you stop giving them the services they need? They're already in the middle of this. Now you got people that's all confused.
Okay.
We got Atlanta cop. And I end with this. We had Atlanta cop yesterday. They found him dead in his home. So my wife said, what do you think happened? I said, they said no sign of forced entry. I said, that's suicide. He killed his wife and killed himself. Depression is strong. We need the mental health profession. We need Dr. Dotson to be out there. Doc, we need you to keep doing the things that you're doing in your profession, being that great clinician. You know, right now they're talking about putting clinicians or psychologists in the cars with police officers. I think we need it. You think about it. What it takes to be a police officer, a high school diploma, a GED, that's not enough knowledge to go out there. And then you got to go to court and defend yourself against an attorney who's been in school for 6-7 years and specialized in that area. Keep doing the great work, sir.
Yeah. So, Dr. Neely, my next question is coming to you. And I need for you to tell us, how can law enforcement rebuild its trust with communities?
Well, they got to start from the top. We got to have leaders willing to get out there. I was impressed the other day. They had a shooting of about 15 to 20 juveniles in a high-scale area in downtown Atlanta. And the police chief didn't just come in on a press conference from his office. He was on scene. We got to have police officers that care about the community. We got to have police officers that care about the young men and women that they're dealing with. We got to have more mentors like us. Right? This is what a mentorship. So when we get out into the community and go talk to our youth, go out to the juvenile centers and talk to these kids that's locked up, find out why they're in there, what can we do to help them change? Go into the county jails and talk to these people before they get sentenced and find out what can we do to change your life if you get out before going to state prison. We got to have police officers that care. Right now, we don't have it. I think we got police officers that are driven by race, religion, and politics. The race is being biased about what's going on right now, whether you're Democrat or Republican. The political side is whether I support Trump or whether you support Obama, whether I'm black or I'm white. We're supposed to be neutral, unbiased when we go out and assess a scene. It's not happening. You know, people are always talking about how come so many arrests occur in black communities. It's over-policed. That's why. All the crime is not being committed in the black area, just more police there. So you're going to find the crime. Everybody's committing crime. You can find it wherever you go. If you look for it, you can go in the white area and find it. But they don't want to go up there because if you see too many police cars, that's causing distractions. So we got to change our mindset, change the way we think. Going into 2026, and that's one of the things I do in the classroom. I'm a criminal justice professor. I teach it. I go into the classroom. I talk about changing the mindset of cops. We can't start with the old cops. We got to wash them out. They can't be changed. We got to get new cops coming in, new law enforcement officers with a new mindset, taking away all of this stuff that we talked about, race, religion, and politics, taking away the era of what is his name, Patel, how he's gone in and corrupted the FBI. You got agents quitting. I think you said it, Brother Roary. You talked about scientists quitting in the CDC because of the administration and the leadership team. Half the great investigators in the DEA and the FBI walked away because of the leadership team now. That's what we got to change, sir.
Yeah. Brodderick, I'm coming to you with this one because I think this is something that a lot of people also need to get a little bit more of an understanding of. Can you tell us what progress was made in the HIV prevention and treatment?
I can't say progress has been made. I'll take that back. I do take it back. There has been the introduction of what I consider progress reference to prevention services. It's PrEP. If you're not familiar with PrEP, PrEP is prophylactic to prevent from tracking HIV. They have the pill for oral form, which have two types of pill form. Then they have the injectable. They introduced a long-term injectable now that you can take 2 times a year instead of taking every other month, which I think will impact prevention services on a long-term basis. But with this current administration, who knows how this is going to play out, because getting people access to it is the thing. If you look at the uptake of PrEP, folks of color, specifically men who have sex with men of color, they're at the low part of the totem pole reference to uptake of PrEP services, but they're the highest one being impacted by HIV. So we need to change the narrative in community and provide access to that, to the services, because prevention, education, it works. PrEP is shown is a huge, great tool that can prevent contraction of HIV. But also we need to have a conversation also, coupled with that is DoxyPEP. DoxyPEP prevents gonorrhea, chlamydia, and syphilis as well. We have a couple of those conversations together. So I can say those changes have impacted and shifted how we do prevention work, but we need to have more conversations around it in community, but also we need to stop shaming people for how they have sex. Sex work is work. Right. Whether you believe it or not. You don't have to agree with it, but sex work is work.
Wait, what are you saying that? So I don't know how to take that up.
Sex work is work. You don't have to agree with it, but sex work is work. Because I'm very sex positive. I don't shame people for what they choose to do. I choose to educate people around how they can have healthier sex. Working on that. We need to talk about the stigma and shame that's associated with it and address the social determinants of health that are impacting our community as a whole. People don't have access to healthcare, don't have access to insurance. People not finishing high school. We need to focus on getting folks educated.
Yeah.
We need to address their mental health issues, their substance abuse issues. And all those things are impacting our numbers when it comes to HIV, especially our community. But also, what it also found is this. We focus so much on men who have sex with men that we forget African-American women who are the second ones that are being impacted all the more by HIV. We need to increase our conversation and narrative around HIV prevention services for women of color in particular.
So can I ask you this, Brodderick, as a follow-up? Because what I think is so interesting is that with you also being an advocate and in knowing that these things are actually out there, do you believe that because some people understand that there are some treatments for some of these STIs that, basically it leads to just crazy behavior? Do you think that's the case?
We have to talk about technology. This right here, wonderful, wonderful invention. But we have to talk about what's happening with our cell phones. We have all these quote unquote dating apps that give people access to easy sex. You can download it up. It's Jack, Grindr, Scrub, Sniffy, and the list goes on and on and on. They're coming out with more all the time. People are having sex. And it used to be back in the day where you have to work to have sex. Now you don't have to work at it. Some of these apps tell you exactly how close somebody is to you, represent how many feet they are close to you. So with that being said, that has increased people's access to sex and easy sex.
Wow.
So that's included, that's part of the narrative. We have to talk about, again, stigma and shame associated with HIV or sexuality and how people identify. Sexuality is very fluid in the current world that we live in, but we still have stigma and shame that's associated with it. I'm in the South. We're in the Bible Belt. You have to couple religion in with that as well. Having conversations about religion. I've done prevention work. I love my African-American churches, but sometimes they're very challenging the work with reference to having conversations around HIV. And sometimes I'm going in with pastors and said, hey, let's do an example. Can I step in your pulpit? Let's pretend like it's Sunday. Let's look out across your congregation. There are babies in your congregation. There are older folks in your congregation. Somebody's having sex in your congregation. If some people weren't having sex, guess what? You would have a congregation every Sunday. So why can't we start talking about sex in a healthy way instead of putting stigma and shame on it? Because guess what? Somebody had sex to get you here. And if you're married and you have children, you had sex to get your children here, did you not? So we need to start having those honest conversations in our community, but also we need to start having these honest conversations at our tables. It starts in our homes.
Mm-hmm.
We need to start having conversations around our dinner tables about this.
Jason, let me come to you here as we just mentioned and talk about stigmas. Can you tell us what role did stigma play in 2025 when it came to mental health?
Like I said, I'm seeing a change. So I'm fortunate to work with adolescents and families, and I'm fortunate to work with Black and Brown communities. And I always say to my parents, do not be upset with the hip hop. So this is an artist named, what's his name? NBA Youngboy. And what I'm noticing is that he's talking about his mental health. Lil Durk is talking about his mental health. And just yesterday, one of my patients, he's 15 years old, his phone rang. He picked up the phone and he said, I can't talk right now. I'm with my therapist. I said, you with your therapist? I said, you tell me you have a therapist? He said, yeah, I have a therapist. I think there are people in the hip hop world, especially with my Black and Brown kids, that are talking about their challenges, they're talking about their mental health. So when you look at trap music, if you actually listen to the lyrics, they're talking about getting their heart broken. They're talking about crying at night. They're talking about their boys being shot and killed and processing it and asking for help. What I'm seeing, and I love what I'm seeing right now, is my Black young men who are supposed to be strong, tough, and just they're supposed to be the man and everything else. They're talking about accessing services, getting help. When I go into the juvenile justice department or a juvenile correction center, and they'll say, "Oh, that's Mr. Dotson. He's my therapist. He's here to see me." And they're like, "Oh, he's your therapist? He don't look like a therapist. He's not white. He ain't wearing a tie. He's just chill." I'm seeing the change, and it's making me happy though, because we need help. And back when I was a kid, back when we were probably all kids, only white folks are crazy. We're not crazy. And what happens in my house stays in my house. So if Uncle touched you, you don't talk about it. You just pray about it and stay away from Uncle. We all know Uncle's crazy. If I'm loving the change that I'm seeing. I'm loving the change that I'm seeing. I love the fact that my young Black mothers are encouraging their kids to get help. And they will sit here and say, this is your therapist, and he's going to talk to you, and he's going to work with you. It's a beautiful thing. So I know that racism in America was hoping by creating Project 2025 that it would suppress Black and Brown voices. But just like COVID in 2020, the rise of Black Lives Matter, it was all lives matter. You couldn't say Black Lives Matter. Everybody was at home. Everybody was upset. Everybody was angry. And everybody started coming out. Now we have Black Lives Matter. I think one thing about Black and Brown people, we know how to rise. And we work just like a diamond. We work well under pressure. We work well under pressure. And it's beautiful when my kids are, and these are my kids who are engaging in criminal behavior, who are in just trying to find a voice. And the fact that they'll pull over and be like, oh, this is Mr. Dotson, this is my therapist, it makes me happy. So I can speak for New Jersey and New York and Pennsylvania. I'm seeing the change when it comes to mental health services. I'm seeing the change when it comes to drug and alcohol services. My kid, he had his father join. I had a session today, and he had his father join us. And the father he's having struggles. He's having struggles with alcoholism. He's already had multiple seizures. He wants to give up. And his son said, I want you to meet Mr. Dotson, and he's going to help you and get the help that you need. And this boy, 14 years old, and he's helping his father. It's beautiful. So I'm seeing change. I'm seeing positive change. I'm seeing sustainable changes.
So
Anything
can you tell us, like, what is it that you're doing? What are some of the great techniques that you're using that's allowing these young people to be expressive and open with you to tell you how they're feeling and how you are helping them to come back to be better within themselves?
So I always tell my therapist on my team, and I always tell the governing board whenever a funder reaches out to me and they question my practice. Medical mistrust is very prevalent among Black and Brown communities. They're not going to trust their provider. We have centuries of being harmed by our providers. I always tell my clinicians, go in as you. Go in as you. Don't try to put on this air like I'm a college professional. I have the degrees. I'm better than you. Go in as you. So I'm fortunate to go into the communities to provide therapy. I'm fortunate enough to go into their homes to provide therapy. As soon as I get there, I take off my shoes. Even if the house is a mess and I see just challenges, if I see roaches, if I see a messed up house, I always tell my therapist, find something positive in that house and give that parent a compliment. Girl, you got a nice house. How you doing this? That's a nice picture right there. It reduces their anxiety. Then I joke and I laugh, and I always tell my people, I'm here to help. That is so simple. I'm here to help. Then also, I tell my therapist I have an agency, and I'm training my therapist to do what I'm doing so we can reduce medical mistrust. Show up on time. Don't cancel. Be transparent. If you don't know, say you don't know. Don't do this yo, yo, yo. Even my white therapist, yo, 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 yo. Don't do that. Be corny. I always tell my kids, I'm corny. I don't know what the hell that is. I don't know that rapper. I know who Ultra is. I know Alicia Keys back in my days. And I make them laugh. I use humor. But I bring myself. I build report first. And then once they start talking, you show up. You and you listen. You don't try to give advice. You allow them to be heard. People need to be heard.
Dr. Alford, how has technology changed the classroom experience this year?
Oh, it's changed it, or yeah, it's changed it in big ways. I think ultimately, and this is probably the most impactful thing, has been the integrity of academic rigor when it comes into the use of AI. And I've seen it transpire probably over the past year and a half, where at one point I was sitting in a conference and there was a presentation. It was a large conference. I think we were probably 2,500 um, higher ed professionals in the room. And part of it was basically a conversation specifically of what does it truly mean for a student to utilize AI technology within the classroom? And does it necessarily mean that they are not um, adhering to the academic integrity of it? But also, how can a student leverage it, or how can institutions teach students how to leverage AI in order to be able to support their learning? So I think that's one of the ways specifically that we're seeing a big boom when it comes into technology within the higher education aspect of it, or even within the classroom all in itself. Outside of that, it is really just understanding as far as what innovative things are happening within the world that basically can be transitioned back into the classroom space in order to give that real world practical insight and understanding. And I have conversations with my teams all the time, is how do we create environments and spaces for our students who are receiving different experiences within the world as they're going to shopping malls, as they're going to their hospitals, as they're going to the DMV, And what are those experiences that we can bring into the higher education realm in a sense that is mirroring that or even ahead of that from the innovative aspect of it? And a lot of times people say that higher education is actually behind. Like, how can you be an institution of higher education learning and be behind as far as the times? It's so crazy when it comes into the as far as thinking about that, as far as the whole irony of it. But if we can create those spaces and utilize the technology in order to leverage that, we'll also continue to see as far as it progress and then ultimately wrapping into as far as the whole technology aspect of it. But AI is probably the number one trending tool or resource as far as that's out there from things like, of course, ChatGPT. You have other platforms like Claude that people are saying that they're having their whole reports and dissertations that are written from Claude that's extracting all of this information. But even designing Gamma AI, designing actual presentations utilizing AI. So it's really how are students able to leverage AI in order to make positive, effective strides that's not replacing their voice and not taking away from what they should truly be learning from the institution of higher education. So it's a depending on who you talk to, it's definitely one of those conversations that is up for debate on both sides. But AI is definitely the number one um, trending technology aspect of that's impacting us across the board.
Brodderick, can you tell us how did the LGBTQ community respond to health challenges this year?
How is the community? I think the communities come together because we're losing access. Yeah, losing access to healthcare as a whole. Uh, Folks have realized that their votes matter, their voices matter, community matters as a whole, and those that are privileged in the community have now understood and understand that guess what? You're a part of becoming marginalized all the more
Mhm.
because of choices that you're making. So I think that's the big thing in working for an organization that serves primarily their community, finding ways to better serve the community and pull from resources that aren't there, making resources if you have to make them,
Mhm.
making a way out of no way,
Mhm.
and collaborating and capacity building in new ways in community. That's what we've had to do, but we must do moving forward this administration.
Mhm. Dr. Neely, what reforms gained traction this year?
Well, I think use of force reform made a little traction. The way we deal with community involvement, community engagement, and also the fact of education in law enforcement. Those reforms, I think, have changed the way law enforcement officers now operate in the field. All right, let's go back. So we talk about use of force. We see that our use of force complaints have declined in marginalized communities, but increased when it comes to the situations like ICE and some of these unexperienced organizations where they're just bringing people in just to capture and rodeo people up and take them into custody. That's what we're looking at. When I'm talking about use of force, I'm talking about the use of the taser, use of deadly force, use of aspartans, things of that nature where police was abusing that force. It's okay to use force, but I think the reform that we're looking at now is how they use that force in the right manner, not to abuse force. Those are the things that we're looking at. Also, we start thinking about the reforms of education, how education have changed the narrative. In the past, officers were not educated. High school diploma, GED, they didn't go get advanced certifications, things of that nature. Now we're pushing for that. I think our legislators are pushing for that. And I think the officers want that because now they realize knowledge is power. So those are the two things I think that have changed and have reformed law enforcement.
Jason, what lessons did 2025 teach mental health professionals when it came to resilience?
What lessons when it came to resilience? It's an interesting question because 2025 was it was a challenging year if you were watching social media, and it was a very so I'll say this right here with my patients who came to my office and what they experienced and what I'm hearing from my clinicians. Resilience is it's important, and I'm trying to be selective with my words as well too, because I'm an 8 year. But it's just been an interesting year. And as I'm reflecting back, because I've had an interesting year with my patients as well too, when it comes to resilience in 2025, and with clinicians and with communities, not giving up. What I'm seeing right now is people are accessing care when it comes to mental health services. The fact that there's a long waiting list, there's people are complaining that they cannot get help. However, they don't stop trying to get the help. They understand that mental health services can help. Like I said before, there are artists who are talking about their mental health challenges. It's no longer taboo. It's no longer something should be ashamed of. You're no longer seeing a shrink. You're seeing a licensed clinical professional. We're seeing people just showing up, talking about their challenges. Even when someone engages in a criminal behavior or in someone creates harm, and people are talking about, well, did that person have access to care? Did that person did somebody reach out and help that person? Did they have unresolved childhood trauma? Did they not have access to care? And if not, why not? And right now, with the new year coming and the substances that may be declining, we may see a challenge with people not getting health care. And we may see people engaging in riskier behaviors, harmful behaviors, and using illicit substances to cope with their stress.
So let's take it from this perspective. When we think about the profession itself, the mental health profession, what punches did it take? Prior to this year, the punches that were taken and the throwing stigmas and things of that nature. How was the profession able to bounce back with this resilience to get people to now be able to accept clinicians such as yourself and the help that you guys give? What kind of resilience was that? How did that work?
See, I'm trying to understand the question as well too, because maybe I'm at a different maybe what's happening in New Jersey is different then, because what we're doing here in New Jersey is we're getting people the help and the care that they need. And I understand that different states operate differently though. And I can't speak negative. I know that each state is different. However, New Jersey, when it comes to healthcare, I mean, yes, we're a very fortunate state and we have the resources. So we're able to give people the help that they need. And there are so many community-based organizations out there that are pushing mental health services. So we have the support. We're working with each other. And I know other states are not fortunate to have what we have. But even if you don't have insurance, New Jersey finds a way to get you the help that you need, especially when it comes to mental health services. You're going to get the help that you need. So we didn't get the pushback. So I can't speak on the national level. I can only speak on what's happening in New Jersey.
Okay. Dr. Neely, what role does ethics play in leadership today?
Well, it plays a great role. That's the problem we have right now. Most of our leaders are not ethical. most of our leaders shouldn't be leading. You know, in order to lead, you must be a good follower. You know, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. We can listen more and talk less. We don't want to listen to the people beneath us on the side of. We want to just give orders and dictate. It's not a good leader. Ethics plays a great role, I think, in any profession, whether you're a clinician, whether you're an advocate for different organizations, whether you're in higher ed, and especially in law enforcement, because that's all you have. When you get on that stand and you raise your right hand, if you're not ethical, a good attorney going to bring it out of you. And it's going to ruin the profession. It's going to ruin you as a human. One of the things that I've learned and I've always talked about nationally, so I'm glad Jason brought that up. Brother Dotson brought that up about he can only speak from New Jersey, but I'm going to talk to you about nationally law enforcement, because I travel around the country teaching at different police academies, nationally and locals organizations. And one of the things we talk about is, why is it the fact that we don't teach ethics after you come out of police academy? And while you're in police training, we only teach about an hour block of training. And I'm tired of them saying, well, ethics is your own values and morals. You should know that. That should be instilled within you. Well, if that's the case, why are so many police officers committing unethical behavior? Most cops do not commit criminal behavior. They commit unethical behavior, which lead to criminality. They continue to do it, and all of a sudden now we cross the line. We're on the other side. It's unethical and it's criminal. They end up in jail. Back when I started policing, they didn't put police officers in jail. You committed those violations, you lost your certification, you got terminated. Now they put you in jail. I've never seen so many law enforcement officers put in jail. Look at Derek Chauvin. How ethical was that? For 9 minutes, he had his knee on a man's neck when the man said, I can't breathe. How unethical is that when I hear the community saying, well, if you can talk, you can breathe. He could talk, so it's obvious he can breathe. He's telling you to get off his neck. He's straining, giving you all he can. They're telling you that that's unethical behavior. Look at January 6th. I seen cops between doors having their head squished, their bodies diminished, being beaten by other law enforcement officers. By the civilians that we've been trained, hired, and ethically guided to protect. Beaten. And most of them was law enforcement officers or military personnel. And I consider military part of law enforcement. They police the world. We police the county, state, or municipality. But the unethical behavior I see now is putting our National Guard on the street to police our people. That's not their job.
Right.
That's unethical. So leadership has to be held accountable. Leadership must be responsible. That's why I'm so upset with SCOTUS right now. The United States Supreme Court. They should be holding our president accountable. Congress should be holding our president. He's our leader of the free nation. Hold him accountable. We won't have these problems. Jason won't have to come on here and say, I only know from a New Jersey standpoint. He would know nationally because they'll be training, giving conferences, giving us the ability to learn from others in different states. Roary wouldn't have to be advocating for funding for LGBTQ rights or other rights, or funding for protection of health care and things of that nature. We wouldn't have to. Leadership, true leadership, will see that is needed. True leadership will see that law enforcement can't be led by the blind. It has to be led by the knowledgeable, those that are experienced, those that have the ethical behavior and the training to make sure that we're doing the right thing. Because if you're not doing the right thing, how are you going to hold me accountable? And I ended on this to say, you must inspect what you expect in good leadership. Yes, sir.
Oh, you got that right. Dr. Alford, how can institutions better support first-generation students?
I'll say number one is understanding them. One challenge that I've always had with institutions, sometimes when we're looking at supporting Black and Brown students, first generation students across the board, as far as that come to our institutions, that does not come from the background of being exposed to education, is sometimes we get in our seats and we forget that as far as the knowledge and the insight that a student needs is not the same knowledge and insight that we once had. And sometimes we make decisions thinking that we are the student and not understanding that the demographics have shifted, the student needs have shifted, and we make these decisions for students without talking to the student. So I think the best way to address to support a first generation student is one, approaching it from a trauma informed care type of mindset to really understand the background of each individual student and making sure that it's personalized and not. So having an opportunity where you are meeting with the student and supporting them in order to be able to address what's your story, what's your individual unique story that you're bringing to the institution in order to support your journey while you're here, and then also be able to support your journey while you're transitioning. The thing is, when it comes into first generation students, we know that they're coming to an institution of higher learning without having the necessary insight of what it takes in order to navigate our systems. And the reason why I say navigate our systems is because when it comes into that whole aspect of it, it's these are processes, systems, operational rules that we've created within our institutions that we're expecting our students to know. And that's not always the case. So being able to create a mechanism where we are meeting that student where they are allows them to be able to navigate our spaces with integrity, with ease, and with relationship building. So I would say that would be the thing, in a sense, to be able to address the first generation students, but then also having the support systems that are in place. People that look like them, understand as far as their lived experiences, and be able to support them along their journey, I think is going to be the best way.
Brodderick, so people can understand what it is to be an advocate and with the work that you do. Can you tell us what role did data analysts, the analysis of the data, how did that play in public health advocacy?
Data drives funding. It's just that simple. The numbers determine where funding goes. In particular, I just use this example years ago because I've been in public health now for 20 years. Years ago, when uh, the face of HIV changed and it was no longer white gay men and it changed to people of color, the funding shifted. And that was data driven. That was data driven because the numbers were increasing in African American communities, specifically men who have sex with men, African American men who have sex with men. Funding follows the data. And
Um, go
okay,
ahead.
no, go ahead. You're about to say something.
Okay. Well, no, I was just gonna go to my next question. So
Okay.
are you done?
Yes.
Okay. Um, Dr. Alford, what lessons did 2025 teach us about student mental health?
That it was a much larger issue than we anticipated. I think when 2020 came into play, as far as COVID, a lot of institutions of higher education started doing studies and uncovering that, of course, the pandemic basically helped to shine light on it. So you had studies like um, the Hope Center's study, as far as when they looked at different things. You had Better Mind programs that are out there that help to really identify just different things that were going on. Of course, you had the Pew Research Center that was conducting studies in relation to mental health. And based all of it, the numbers started telling us that a lot of our students that were coming to our institutions were struggling. And based off of that, institutions had to take a reactive and then also a proactive approach in order to be able to address that. And a lot of times that involved of understanding one, the reality is that institutions aren't um, psychologists, and we don't run our own clinics necessarily in order to be able to to be able to address that, and understanding that we need to rely on our therapists and rely on the partnerships that are within our communities in order to connect our students to the resources that are available. And based off of that, making sure that students are aware of the resources that are there for them. So it was more along the lines of creating visibility and also trying to address the stigma that if something is going on with you on a mental level, it's not something in the sense that you have to shy away from. The institution is there to be able to support you and to be able to connect you to those resources. So that I would say that's what 2025 helped us to see and to realize that. And I go back to my question or my response earlier, that we just can't look at the academic aspect, that we now have to look at the holistic support for students that are coming to our campus, and mental health is just one of them that comes into play as far as how do we support the whole student instead of just the academic student.
I got some comments here in the chat, and one says that they want to thank us for bringing this panel together this evening. Another one, She Matters Now, says, great discussion. Come on, Black men. We need and want your leadership. Um, then there's, I'm not sure what that is. I had to put my glasses on. It says, one says, fight with our voice, well, with our vote. And this other one here, Lord, I'm sorry about this. I'm trying to make sure I could read these. um, let's see. This one says, I guess it was alluding to from Brodderick's perspective. It says infection rates will skyrocket in POC communities and poor communities. Um, Another one says it's unfortunate. Unfortunately, it's not just getting out and vote. I've worked many of the elections, and I find my folk, my neighbors, will show up to the polls and they don't know who is running or they don't know. So that right there is about education. Where we got to educate our communities a whole lot more. Somebody else here mentions specifically the ballot initiatives. We have to show up and pay attention. Um, the initiatives issues, the candidates, present candidates, what they're advocating have a D in front of their name. So I'm not sure if that means that vote Democrat or what that's supposed to mean. Somebody here else says that they agree. Then there's, but old cops are training new cops. So the old way of thinking is being passed down. Somebody here says prep was progress. And this is alluding to the trans community. As a trans person living in Atlanta, I just want to genuinely thank you for acknowledging the calls to throw us away as a peace offering. I stand with you. Um, this one says, that's right. Then this is about the oldest profession. When you were talking about sex workers, what are some of the mental health challenges faced by marginalized communities? Jason, would you like to help with that question?
Yes. Not having enough providers that look like them. That is, like I said, once it was discovered that, and I stand by this statement, I stand by this. Once it was discovered that Black women were considered the most educated demographic in the country, we start seeing a change in what's considered professional or not. And we need people who are providers, licensed clinicians who look like us, who understand where we're coming from, who are not going to freak out if we say something that is part of the culture and community and call child protective services on them. That's what we need, is providers who look like us, who are familiar with us and familiar with with the community that they're working with.
Okay. Well, there's also a comment here from, oh, that's black gay male. And it says, having healthy conversations about sex. He likes that. Then there's somebody that's talking about affordable regular care with professionals. It does no good to start someone on medications and not follow up for 6 to 12 weeks. This one says, we are under attack. You guys already spoke about education. What about the food and housing working parents who are worrying about keeping a roof over their heads when rent is reaching $4,000 a month? Is there anyone that want to help this young lady with this answer?
I mean, I can answer from the context of higher
I'll jump in and
education.
just say that.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr.
I heard a
Alford.
voice.
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah, I've so in my institutions across the country and then programs, because I've basically served in multiple programs, cohorts that basically address food insecurity. Actually, some of my work specifically on my campus is I led or helped to lead as far as an institutional wide movement where we really analyzed as far as food insecurity, which also uncovered other insecurities on our campuses and really understood as far as who our students were and some of the things that in the sense that they were facing. So it helped to launch food banks. And I serve at a multi-campus institution and we have 7 campuses. So it made us, in a sense, launch a multi-campus food bank partnered through Second Harvest to be able to address that, have conversations with our dining services for unused or wasted food in some cases to be able to address that, to understand as far as what our students need, meal vouchers, emergency funding programs, working through our foundation, folks within the community in order to raise dollars to bring awareness of what was going on when it came to food insecurity. We had other things as far as when it came into housing. It really depends on the institution because you have some institutions that are resident housing that basically they have dorms, they might have apartments and since that they built around their communities in order to be able to address that aspect of it. But then you also have the aspect of it where you might have commuter campuses where that's not the case. So then you have to reach into the communities in order to make sure that there's affordable housing conversations that are taking place in order for our students and those that are within the particular jurisdiction of our institutions to be able to address that. And of course, across the country, it changes based off of the disparity of what housing costs. Like if you were to live in California, New York, housing is astronomical. When you think about that whole aspect of it, but it still traces back to having those conversations with those who have direct control over what some of those rates are. I do know in some states there are specific rules and laws that are put in place that you can't go over a certain threshold based off of income to create some of those opportunities, but that is not the case across the board in all 50 of our states. So being able to advocate and indicate that this is a challenge for both residents, citizens within our communities, and based off of that, how do we create opportunities to form these partnerships or to build communities, housing communities specifically that can be able to address that. But then also advocating on a state level, federal level to say these are our gaps and having conversation with the representative, Congress, Senate, and basically get in their ears. And what I've learned is investing time to actually speak to your legislators, writing letters to them, going to visit them at the capitals, things of that nature does move the needle because a lot of times they want to hear from the constituents and not just someone that's within our state. So that's been one of the strategies as far as that I've saw that has transpired from my seat when it comes into some of the various things that our students are facing, the holistic aspect, the holistic needs of our students that are coming from our communities is those conversations that we're having.
Brodderick, did you have anything you want to address when it comes to that?
I can piggyback on it. I'll just use my organization as an example. We look at the whole totality of an individual. So we provide emergency food vouchers. We connect folks to food pantries. Uh, we work with apartment communities where there's income-based housing. Also, like I mentioned before, we have the HOPPA program, which is under the HOPPA program. There's two branches of the HOPPA program. We have Strong Youth with short-term rental, utility, and mortgage assistance. Then you have the TBRA program, which is more tenant-based rental assistance, which is more permanent housing. So we work building collaborations with community, but also use resources in particular to connect folks to community. And sometimes I just don't work with people that are HIV positive. We work with people that aren't positive as well and connecting them to resources and housing resources because it's looking at the whole person, and housing is a way of preventing people from contracting HIV, believe it or not. If you have stable housing, you're less likely to do things to put yourself at risk.
And this person states that from a mental health perspective, is saying that that there's a slow progress and sometimes counterproductive to actually stabilizing legitimate mental conditions, even as simple as mild clinical depression. So I'm assuming that that was dealing with one of the questions earlier. And this person says that how does one break the generational curse of mental abuse? Jason, did you want to answer that question?
Yes. I want breaking the curse.
Generational curse.
Generational cycle of abuse. And this is what I do with my youth and with my families. Is basically if someone's accessing services, I always explain to them, share your experiences with your colleagues, with your friends, with your families. Talk about what you've been through. Also, working, so I always tell my therapist, if you're working, especially those who are working with children, work with the whole family. So I always work with the caregiver. I always encourage my therapist to work with the caregiver and applaud the caregiver for making sure that the child gets the help that they need, but also encouraging the caregiver to get services themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about it, basically social media, and I'm a big fan of social media. It's just how you use it. Going on social media, recording a video and talking about how mental health services have helped you. And also talking about the trauma you've been through. I always tell people, just because you turn 18 or you become an adult or you marry that amazing person or you get that phenomenal job, if you have not addressed your unresolved childhood trauma, it does not go away just because you become an adult. You have to work at it. You have to process it. And it's going to show up in your relationships. It's going to show up at work. It's going to show up. Use your clinician, use the services that in your community to help you process what has happened to you, what has harmed you. And then talk about it. Don't keep it to yourself. Knowledge is power. We're so conditioned to talk about, well, I got mine, now you get yours. Now talk about the benefit of what you got from the services. And that's what I love about some of these TV shows, these the housewives in New Jersey, when they're going to go see their therapist and they're talking about it. They're allowing themselves to be vulnerable. Even with the police officers, and I love the fact that they're encouraging to say, you know what, I cannot handle this right now. Let me get a mental health therapist, or let me get a professional who can help me with this. Allowing yourself to be vulnerable, allowing yourself to say, you know what, I cannot do this and I need help. It's going to require all of us talking about what we're going through.
Well, I have another young lady here that says it's very important most times to have a therapist that looks like you. Then this gentleman says it's great to hear that the stigma associated with mental health is changing. This person states that you are teaching your therapist to truly meet people where they are at, not criticize what they haven't done. And then there's another question here, Jason, where this person is asking, why would a therapist need a therapist?
Interesting. Why would a therapist need a therapist? I was going to do a joke, but I'm not. But I'll just keep it real. We're human. We hurt too. We're not Superman. We're not. We're not. We don't go to school and then all of a sudden we have all the answers and we can take everything. Remember, we're absorbing everything that we're hearing from our patients, from our clients. And so my dissertation, so I'm going for my PhD. And what I'm learning from my research is that if you take someone who has not been skilled, who has not been the paraprofessional, so Brodderick can probably attest to this. When it comes to our interventions, our many voices, we take people who are part of the community. We don't train them. We give them a 3 to 5 day training, put them in a clinical role, and then we don't address their unresolved childhood trauma. We don't address their substance use. We don't address their trauma. Being Black and being a man is already challenging, and we're not encouraging you to talk about that. And then you put them in a leadership role to talk about somebody else's problem and to process it, not knowing if we're going to experience transference or counter-transference, if we're going to be triggered. And then what happens is, and I'm noticing with a lot of people in my colleagues, they end up leaving the field. They enter the field HIV negative, leave the field leaving with HIV. Enter the field not having a substance use disorder, leave the field, go into their AA group and say, I can't do it anymore. I always encourage my colleagues, my therapists, you're not Superman. We all need help. And also, those 40 continuing education credits that we're supposed to take, when you're there, make sure you're present. Get the help that you need. Get the information that you need so you're not doing harm, but also applying what you learned to yourself. So going to a therapist, so I have a therapist, I have a coach who I meet with for 2 hours every week. It helps. It helps. It allows me to be able to show up for my community.
Okay, the next comment says, excellent advice, Jason Dotson. Then we have cultural competency is one of the biggest factors to rebuilding trust, especially in Black and Brown communities. It's truly rewarding working with Jason as change agents to give hope to humanity.
Thank you.
Then this was there's a comment alluding to the question I asked you, Dr. Alford, about technology. This person says, I'm afraid that AI cannot be put back in the box. That's the scary part. Somebody says that I like the very candid and frank conversation being discussed. LGBT CBOs must come together and share resources. The questions are too broad, is what's this being commented. It taught us to be more in tune with transparency. I don't know what's hard to process, so I'm not sure what that's alluding to. And oh man. What is this? I think I missed some. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure that. This one says, Charlemagne the God, for example, openly talks about his therapy sessions during his radio show. Okay. The openness helps lay the groundwork for resilience. 2025. I'm not sure what this, I guess, retaught me the importance of routine self-care to better provide mental health care for our community members. Number one, it started with looking like your client having firsthand knowledge of the culture. Most of our leaders are less than honorable people. As that's for what you had to say, Dr. Neely. And this last one here is, let's continue to uplift and encourage one another to seek help when needed, to talk openly about our experience, and to remember that being resilient also means knowing when to ask for support. Okay. Brodderick, if you can tell us what lessons did the COVID era policies still teach us as of today?
That excuse my language, that this country is a hot, shitty mess in many ways, excuse my language. But it also taught us that black and brown people don't matter to other people that don't look like us. That's one of the main lessons that it taught us, and that we were under attack then and we're still under attack now because that administration was in office then and they're in office now. He let millions of us die, but also COVID also taught us the value and importance of self-care, working together, coming together, resilience, but also the importance of, how can I best say this? The need for black and brown communities to depend upon each other all the more. Because during COVID, we had funding that was in Atlanta, and our initiative was specifically focused on black and brown communities and getting the word out about COVID, addressing the ambivalence around getting vaccinated, educating them, but also connecting the clinics. It brought up medical mistrust, and disinformation is out there, and it continues to be out there around. It shined a light on marginalized communities and how we are underserved in many ways, and how we continue to be underserved.
Jason, how did political shifts affect mental health policy?
I would say, and I'll use my words wisely, but the Second Amendment, whenever, especially with the Republican Party, whenever there's a shooting, whenever there is a killing, a mass shooting, it's always blame mental health. They need help instead of actually addressing what it really needs, which is basically addressing why do we need weapons of mass destruction? Why do we need weapons of mass destruction? Why do we need a gun that can shoot 50 people within a minute? But it's always mental health. And then it's more along the lines of, we'll say it's a mental health problem, but we don't throw money at it. We don't throw funding at it. We don't throw support at it. It's more of, that's just mental health. He was out of control. Let's just move on. We cannot continue on just ignoring the pink elephant in the room. We cannot continue on just saying that they have mental health and that's it. Or they just, how can I say this in a way? Basically, what I'm trying to say is that the Republican Party has found a way just to say mental health is just, we just bring it up. It's a hot topic. We somebody did something crazy, blame mental health, and let's not address it. We don't see funding for it. We don't see support for it. It's just, that's just what it is. We're not even seeing. I'm not seeing, and I'll say I'm not, when it comes to even discussions happening in Congress about it. It may start and then it dies out. We're not talking about it pretty much. It's always, the person was quote unquote crazy or he had mental health concerns, but that's all we do. We don't actually address it.
Dr. Neely, what challenges remain in addressing systemic bias?
Well, we got a long way to go when we start thinking about implicit bias, when we start thinking about the topic of race, religion, and politics, and also that thing called a lack of leadership. In order to address that, we got to have leaders in place that can understand what leadership is, the process of influencing people toward a common goal. Are we doing that right now? The United States is totally divided. We're on the verge of a civil war. I often think about effective leadership. It sets directions, builds trust. It falters collaboration and guidance among individuals to a common goal. Are we doing that with our leadership team right now? In order to eliminate that bias, we got to have effective leaders. In order to take the bias and change the narrative, we got to have people to understand what we're doing and why we're doing what we're doing. In order to address this issue, we got to get our young people on board and let them understand and see a clear vision, have a strategic vision of where they want to be and why they want to get there. Because right now, society is setting the trends for us. In Georgia, we have open carry. Anybody can carry a gun, conceal. You just said it, Jason. Why do we need all these guns? Just like law enforcement, the bias is every time there's a bad shooting by law enforcement, first thing they say, oh, they need more training. No, we don't. Police officers train every single day. We have to shoot every 6 months and requalify. They don't need more training. They need better education. One thing my brother, Dr. Alford, may attest to, we can't teach common sense. And always, I say common sense ain't always common. Okay. That's how we get around it, sir. Education, knowledge, experience, and ability, and effective leadership. Yes, sir.
Dr. Alford, what impact did political shifts have on education policy?
Now, so that's a loaded question. I think ultimately it is, as far as those who are in political seats, those who are in political power, not truly understanding what their decisions are doing to the areas as far as that we're in higher education or in education just overall. And I say that both from the secondary and then also the post-secondary and even going into preschool and really understanding that they all play a part of the whole process as far as how our students are being educated. So those who are in power in political seats, if they don't hear as far as what some of the challenges are and what some of the struggles are that institutions are having in any of those sectors, then it creates an opportunity where those individuals are making decisions that are not well informed. The only way that those who are in the Senate seat, Congress, state representative, things of that nature, other political offices are truly able to make change and to understand truly what is going on is they have to hear from the people. The people have to actively share, this is what's going on within our communities. This is the impacts of what's happening. Or you have this bill on the table. This is what it's going to do if you push it and it goes forward to be basically passed. And those have been some of my direct conversations and some of my direct experiences where I've had to testify on behalf of some legislation that has come from the state and had those conversations to say, you know what? Yes, you might have good intentions, but let's unpack this and let's peel the onion back here. If you do X, Y, and Z, it's going to impact this population of citizens within our communities, within our schools. And is that the direction truly or the heart of this? And then also really understanding it kind of goes back to some of the earlier conversations, the whole DE and I aspect of it. For the past 4 or 5 years, I've been battling as far as an expert witness to inform individuals of different programs that are addressing some of the economic disparities of people of color within our communities. And for some reason, there's ongoing conversations that we should not have programs that specifically target race, sex, or gender type of program within our particular states, not understanding the full context. And part of that goes into play of people who are in office don't necessarily understand the whole impact that is having, and then also understanding that when we're thinking about higher education, the reauthorization of higher education act has not been reauthorized in several years, since the early 2000s actually. And it's so we're operating in a system, in a political system that's been piecemealed together in a world that's moving at a pace that's more rapid than where we currently are. And those who are in these political seats hasn't taken the necessary steps to truly do the full overhaul what is needed in order to really set up our educational structure and our educational systems that it can basically be in alignment with the times that we're ahead of. And people won't understand that unless the constituents, the people who are dealing with as far as the different situations, are basically able to have those voices and advocating and sharing that information with those who are basically in these political seats across the country and within DC. So all of that plays into as far as the whole aspect of we need to be advocating more, and we need to be sharing truly what those pain points are for our students from preschool all the way up into higher education.
I want a follow-up question for you because you mentioned a lot of things that are very, very impactful, but also are very truthful. And
Mhm.
I'm not going to go back to the historical context, but what we have seen at this point, and we know, as you mentioned, the legislators that are in place right now,
Mhm.
it's a fact that schools that sit in a lot of our communities, marginalized Black and Brown communities, that these schools are left to intentionally fail and be under resourced. Now, with that being said, this has been for the last 30 some odd years.
Mhm.
Okay. And so, in looking at that part that's lacking in the education system right now, do we expect those that are in seats now that do this legislating to actually change that? Are they going to make that better, or are we going to organize our communities ourselves and take care of our own education? Because if we don't, that's never going to get fixed. And we're going to keep saying the same thing over and over again.
So to address the first part of your question, as far as those who are current in the political seats now, do they have basically the power, or are they going to push as far as the agenda, say to reauthorize the Higher Education Act that's technically hasn't been reauthorized since 2008? I think it's the last time it was reauthorized. I would say no, because that has to come in as far as administration, specifically with that being an agenda item. Understanding that we have not got there, and understanding the true overhaul of what it's going to take in order to do it, it would be almost political suicide in order to do it now. So you have to have folks that are coming in specifically with a vision in order to attack that coming into their particular term, and then also the leadership that helps to back that support to be able to move forward. The other side of the coin is, although we do have power per se, if we rally together as community in order to be able to change some of the narrative, when it comes into the educational system, it all is connected back into our structure and our governing aspects of it, meaning that there are things that's put in place with the Department of Education, accreditation processes, just different rules and policies that are built into the Code of Federal Regulations that helps to govern as far as what we truly can do. Now, if you think about going like charter schools and things of that nature, even that still has to go back up to the various channels. So although we can do different things like homeschooling, which would be probably the most impactful aspect because you truly do control the curriculum when it comes into that, outside of that, you still have those elements that are traced back to the government in order to determine as far as what is considered to be equivalent or not equivalent based off of the current structure that's in place. So it makes it possible, but it also makes it impossible as well, because it's a two-edged type of sword when it comes into the whole education system. And until we have it sorted out, really, as far as the direction that we have to be in modern day times for a reauthorization of higher education, and a reauthorization of higher education is not just higher education. It goes and it streams down all the way to every aspect of education. And it all feeds into what is our true educational system that we want to present for our students. So it's a, and that's why I say it's a loaded question, because there are so many tenets that's connected as far as to what we really can do to overhaul education and allow us to be able to get to that aspect of it. One powerful tool that I would say, as we're all Black men, is we have HBCUs, and we understand as far as why HBCUs were created in order to be able to take the realm of that aspect of education. But even we have seen, even with this administration, where that has even been attacked as far as funding. So you just have to think about all of the layers of that onion as far as how much control do we really have when it comes into the influence of those political seats that comes from the president all the way down, and who's rooting for what in order to really help us to move the needle forward.
So that is so that just means that still it's going to remain the same primarily, which means
Yeah.
that the education in our communities will continue to be lacking. And as you mentioned, HBCUs, with the attack being on those right now, they're now being infiltrated with folk now that's basically changing them from the inside out, which means that they pretty soon in the next 10, 15 years will no longer be existing. So then it's like, what do you do then?
Yeah. If there was an article maybe like a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, and it was in the Chronicle of Higher Education, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly. But it was based off of this administration, and this administration moving funding from other marginalized, underrepresented community or structures, and giving it like to HBCUs as to be seen as a savior, but it only moved one piece and created a disparity in another. So what's happening is, yes, you're moving pieces to act like there's support, but the truth is you're not adding to, you're taking away. And when you take away and don't replenish anything, you're continuing to create this cycle. And if you're not paying attention, you'll be like, oh, this person or this administration is doing something positive. But when you break it all down, he's like, actually, no, it's not, especially when you're talking about cutting other programs that are impacting students, like getting rid of, as far as federal grants, or talking about that you don't even want the Pell Grant. You don't want to increase it, although, you know, the higher cost of higher education is going up. Living wages are going up, but if you're cutting these programs, what are you doing? Yeah, you're moving the needle in one aspect of it, but you're also reducing it in another. So it just creates a greater impact or a greater problem, and actually widening the gap versus, in the sense, shrinking it. So we probably can go on and on about this, because there's just so many elements when it comes into education that has to be put in place in order for us to truly see upward mobility and a true advancement in what needs to be done in order to have something that is competitive of these other nations that are going on within the world, and really trying to understand as far as where does the United States sit when it comes into educational reform and progression and the leadership that's needed for our citizens.
Dr. Neely, um, how can law enforcement leaders mentor the next generation? Really mentor them, not like do something that's just cosmetic on look. What can they really do?
Well, we got to have caring law enforcement officials to get out there in the field, get into the neighborhoods, get to know the students. You know, a lot of times law enforcement officers don't even know the people that they're dealing with. They don't know the communities, and they work that zone day after day, week after week, month after month. Get into the schools. That's why I think the most important person right now when it comes to law enforcement is that person called a resource officer. That school resource officer has the ability to change those kids' lives from the beginning. right? Eliminate that term, that pipeline from school to prisons. Eliminate that. That's a resource officer. They have the ability to do that, to educate them on what we do. Right now, we run what's called citizens police academies. So it educate the citizens on what we're doing in the community and why we do what we do. And it's always funny to me when I see politicians go through the Citizens Police Academy and they get on the FATS machine, which is a shoot or don't shoot exercise. And they shoot so fast, they're like, wow, like, whoa. So what do you think we're doing when we out there? Mr. Dotson said it best when they said why therapists need a therapist. Law enforcement are human beings. That's what Mr. Dotson said. He said therapists are human. Law enforcement are human beings. When they go home and take off that vest, gun belt, and the shield, they're just regular human beings that have a life too. After listening to people problems all day on domestic disputes in schools, on civil disputes, dealing with child issues in the school system, they go home, they need somebody to talk to. And always the wife or the spouse or the family member don't want to hear it. My wife used to tell me all the time, don't bring your problems home. I don't want to hear it. Who am I supposed to take it to? So in order to change that and to change the mindset, two things. One, we got to continue these citizen interactions with law enforcement, positive interactions. Two, we got to continue to educate our children through our school resource officers and use these grants and all these fundings that we get in our communities for law enforcement for the right reason. Not just locking people up for DUI, but have courses on why they should not drink and drive before they get out there in our schools. Talk about the need for greater compassion and humility in law enforcement. I think we're lacking that now. We figure if we find a law enforcement officer that shows humility, they're weak. We got to change that mindset. We need more people to think like Mr. Dotson, who talks about the fact that people are vulnerable, children are vulnerable. We need not just reach the child, reach the family. That's how we change it.
Brodderick, what innovations in public health stood out in 2025?
I think what happened in 2025 reference to innovations. I'll go back to the long-acting injectable PrEP. That's a huge innovation that has stood out and very much needed. I think what else has happened since January 20th. Everybody in the country has experienced so much upheaval as a whole, and I'll say this. I wouldn't say the innovation, but every day looking to see what funding is going to be cut when it comes to public health. Let's be honest and transparent. Every day we're looking to see what else is going to be dismantled in public health and how it's going to impact the communities that we serve as a whole. And then the innovation, I would say, is organizations finding more ways to do things with less money. Mm-hmm. That would be the innovation. Being more creative with less money and sometimes doing programs without funding, piloting programs without funding. That's the innovation.
Jason, what role does advocacy play in mental health awareness?
Showing up, talking about it, going to Congress and talking about the importance of funding. Bringing it into the schools, bringing it into the police departments, bringing it into the universities, putting it out into people's living rooms. No more just, we don't talk about what's challenging. We don't talk about our problems. So advocacy, making sure that people have access to care. Tomorrow, I'm over here freaking out because some of my patients, some of my families may not have insurance. Mm-hmm. What's going to happen to them? I'm over here looking at the clock like, what is going to happen? Wow. They benefit from it. I love that my kids, my family say, Mr. Dotson, I was against therapy, and then you came in here and you did not give up, and now I'm here. I'm getting the help that I need. When I hear caseworkers tell me that, Jason, your therapist, they're making an impact with the families that they're working with. But after, like I said, New Jersey has this unique program where if you don't have insurance, we'll take care of you only if you're in crisis. But after your crisis has been resolved, it's outpatient care. If you don't have insurance, what's going to happen? If you don't have access to health care. So I love the fact that somebody said Charlamagne the God is talking about mental health. And I love the fact that NBA YoungBoy is talking about mental health. Celebrities are talking about mental health. I love that we are seeing people using their social media accounts to talk about mental health. This is how we change the narrative. This is how we advocate, is by saying, I'm going through this. You're not by yourself. You're not alone in this process. I'm hurting as well too. 2025, like Brodderick said, it's a crazy ass year. Excuse my language. It is. I can watch the news for a while. And it was hard for me to show up for my youth when they said, Mr. Dotson, I'm listening to the news. You want to talk about the news? And I'm like, I don't want to talk about the news. I'm sorry. It's a lot. It is a lot. But like I always tell my kids, I always show kindness and talk about your experience. Do not be afraid that you're asking for help. Allow yourself to be vulnerable. Allow yourself to be the person who can ask for help.
Well, let me do this, you guys. I mean, this chat here is like it is like it's full. It says, yes, Jason, resilience is different regionally. The South, the Bible Belt is different from other regions. This person says, I began 2025 feeling debilitatingly afraid and hopeless, but find myself ending 2025 hardened into determined, unified, obstinate, undeterred, and existence. Then there's a person here that amen the point for Jason's comment about resilience. Jason, I appreciate how you spoke on how you show up in people's homes and find at least one thing to affirm or compliment. Also, being transparent, saying I'm corny shows authenticity and cred. This person says to be ethical is to do harm. Most police officers think to do their job is to do harm. Oh, wow. They are presidents' unethical friends. They're talking about politicians. Expectations for leadership is very low, but our reactions to it is unbalanced. The importance of mentorship, older generations guiding young ones. Great reiteration of Dotson's comments. Yes, Brodderick Roary on point. And most times they don't have knowledge of the different higher education professions that they go into. This person says mental health is academia. While voter education is important, we must be mindful that voter engagement is just as important. Yes, positive with house single mother with 2 children. She earned about $70,000 a year and cannot afford rent. Do not qualify for services because of her income. How do we challenge and change the narrative that seeking help, whether for mental health, HIV, or educational support, is a sign of weakness rather than wisdom? It is recommended. In Atlanta, we recently had a major shooting at Atlantic Station that involved a very large group of colored youth. There's an enormous social media post about blaming race. How can I deter blaming? Ooh, mm. An entire race from being blamed in my community. A therapist cannot hold the world on the shoulders alone. They need a therapist to be able to navigate other folks' issues and their own. In what ways are Black mental health professions actively working to reduce and respond to domestic violence within our communities? And what approach have proven most effective? Jason, do you have an answer for that?
We're taking the courses, getting more involved. So I used to do DV counseling as well, and I always encourage my clinicians, those who work for my agency, taking the courses. When it comes to people's challenges, like I used to work in the HIV field, I always said HIV is not the only thing killing Black men. HIV is not the only thing plaguing Black men. Drug use is not the only thing plaguing our community. There's it's like a cycle. You have, if it's domestic violence, you may look at for substance use. You may look at anxiety, look at depression. You may look at other concerns. But what I would say is get educated, get informed, take the courses, be informed. There's nothing wrong. I mean, we in New Jersey, and I believe across the nation, we have to take 3 hours of continuing education units credits. You get to pick and choose your classes. If you're seeing that the community that you're working with is having challenges with DV, intimate partner violence, substance use, get informed, become an expert. I always tell my like somebody said on the in the chat, Jason's change agents. We are agents of change. If we know that medical mistrust is big and we know it's a big concern, why are we going to continue causing more harm? Even people on my team, I always say, we're here to help. We're here to help, which means that you must educate yourself, especially if you're working with a community that has these concerns.
Okay. How did political changes affect mental health policy? Good luck, Jason. We pray for them, but do not act on the action of them. The website Five Calls is an effective way to engage with our elected officials, regardless of where you live in the U.S. This one goes, it would make sense that a therapist would have his own or her own therapist because they unquestionably at some point need to decompress. All Americans can utilize the Five Calls website to let your voices be heard by our elected officials, regardless of where we reside in the U.S. It has helped to move the needle. This this is an excellent conversation, and thanks to all the panelists, you shared experiences, the range of topics, and those who took time out to join. Knowledge is power, and applied knowledge works powerfully. We must be in it to win it. HBCUs are not just institutions; they are culturally incubators capable of demanding centuries old disinformation and empowering students to become truth bearers in their communities. Um, Somebody's wondering where's the hope. Uh, uh, can we let our voices be heard via the Five Calls website? One type voter engagement. How successful are behavior of interventions? How advocacy is part of the answer, but how many Black men show up when activation is needed? You are the exception. Last question for each of you guys. I'm going to start with you, Dr. Kimani. Um, how can motivational leadership inspire students in uncertain times?
I would say by being an example. I think we resonate as far as with our students during hard times when we're able to share our stories and be able to indicate and bring to the table, as I would say, our experiences to let them know that some of the challenges that they're facing are some of the things that we escaped or basically was able to maneuver and get through ourselves. And when we can be open, honest, and transparent, that usually gives us an opportunity to open the door to build meaningful relationships that helps to do that motivation and to encourage those who basically embrace themselves and who we engage and interact with.
Dr. Neely, can you tell us how did global events influence U.S. policing?
Well, we think about immigration, we think about the tariffs, we think about the wars that are started. You know, Tupac said it best when he said, "We got money for wars, but can't feed the poor." Yes, it affected us. You know, I often think about what happened on January the 6th. You know, you think about the global interaction, the way the world looked at what happened on that day. We think about policing abroad. You know, we think about the things that are taking place now that local law enforcement have to deal with that they're not trained to deal with. You know, look at the ICE agents, look at our DEA agents, look at our FBI agents, the CIA agents, and all of these different people that travel abroad to protect the United States that are now being persecuted by political influences. If you don't think the way I think, or you try to come after me, then you are released, regardless of your skills and qualifications. So I think it's imperative that we get back to effective leadership, getting effective leaders in place. I think is incumbent upon us to have law enforcement officials, whether our police chiefs, our sheriffs, our federal agent leaders, to be more knowledgeable about what's taking place so we can stop this inhibition. We don't have to worry about the war abroad. We're fighting a war right here in our own country, on our own turf, among our own people, because we have ineffective leadership.
Brodderick, what does resilient look like in public health?
Looks like in public health. Staying in the fight, even with funding being cut, mobilizing and being more collaborative, and letting them know that we are in it no matter what they do, because there are human lives that are attached to decisions that they make, and not to make decisions based upon funding. But the key word in HIV is human. You have to remember this is a human condition, and put humanity at the forefront of this and continue to fight. That's what resilient looks like for me.
Jason, what innovation in therapy stood out in 2025?
What innovation in therapy stood out in 2025? I would say back to communication. I mean, the fact that people are talking about their receiving services. The fact that, so what I'm seeing right now is even with our courses, I mean, the classes are filling up. So yes, we have evidence-based interventions, CBT, cognitive behavior therapy. But now I'm seeing my colleagues actually get informed and getting trained in it. But the messaging, the communication, people are actually accessing services. People are talking about their experiences with therapy. That's innovative. That's new. Remember, 50 years ago, if you were seeing a shrink, you were crazy. And if you're Black and you were seeing a shrink, somebody would say, like your mom would say, "We're not crazy. They're crazy, not us. We're not crazy." People are getting the services. People are talking about their experiences with mental health services. And that's innovative.
So in closing, I want to go to each of you, and I want you guys to tell me, each of you, what was the thing that stands out most to you in 2025 that you will remember, and what are you looking forward to in 2026? Starting with you, Jason.
The thing that stood out the most in 2025, I'm gonna be positive. Even though despite the fact that we had this president, well, I was shocked that he got reelected. I was shocked that all these changes happened. I'm shocked that he is acting like a tyrant. However, I love the fact that people are coming together, and we're seeing this in our elections. That people are stepping up and voting and saying this would not be permitted. This would not be allowed. And it's actually showing that our votes do count. People are upset. People are angry. And when people say our votes don't count, people are upset. And we're seeing a change when people in our elections. And what was the second part of your question?
What are you looking forward to in 2026?
I'm gonna just keep it very general. The primaries. I need change. I'm sorry. I need, like I said, in a couple of hours, we're about to lose our health insurance. I need to see that that people are going to show up at the voting polls. People are going to go to Congress and they're going to talk about their experiences. People are going to actually say, I voted. I care. I voted. I'm upset. And even those who voted for the other person and say, I made a mistake. And be vulnerable and say you made a mistake. So I don't know how you made the mistake, but you made a mistake. Talk about your experience. It's just, I need a change. My community needs to change. My colleagues need to change. We are at war right now. It makes no damn sense that we are in the 21st century. History is repeating itself. For those who don't learn history, it seems like this is happening, and this is the reason why education is important.
Brodderick?
How quickly Project 2025 was put in place and all the things that they've done. But what I'm looking forward to is making good trouble. Making good trouble and continuing the fight in 2026.
That's what's up. Dr. Neely?
I would say perseverance. No matter all we've been through, we are still persevering. Our people have been fighting all of our life. So a fight ain't nothing to us. We've been willing to fight. But now it's how we fight. We're going to start fighting in the ballot box, fighting with our minds, fighting with our spirits, fighting with our souls. And what I look forward to is change. Change is the only thing that's constant, and change is coming.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Alford?
I'll say in the words of Maya Angelou, the late, the great Maya Angelou, when a person shows you who they are, believe them the first time. I believe ultimately, as far as what shocked me in 2025 was that some things that we thought that were not possible became possible. And I think it helped to shake our awareness a bit more and start seeing the impact of truly what our voice has and the power that our voice can have when we all come together and do something, but then also the power that our voice doesn't have when we don't come together in order to move things. For 2026, I'm looking for more awareness, more advocacy on the things that matter to our communities and our families, but then also having people to rise up and to stand up in order to make some of the changes that is going to be needed um, to in the future undo some of the crazy things that are transpiring now, because it's going to take some time. It's going to take years to undo what this year has done alone. But being able to acknowledge that and having people that's going to be in the trenches in order to do that fight and do the work that is going to be needed in order to put us back into a position where we can see the benefits of our voices and our impact within our communities. That's what I would say.
Well, as we bring this year in review special to a close, I want to thank our distinguished panelists and all who joined us tonight. Together, we've reflected on the challenges and triumphs of 2025, a year that tested our resilience, demanded our courage, and reminded us of power of our community. We've seen how education continues to shape futures, how law enforcement must be held accountable to justice, how public health and LGBTQ advocacy remains vital to equity, and how mental health is central to our collective well-being. These are not separate struggles, they are interconnected threads in the fabric of our society. 2025 reminded us that leadership is about truth telling, that resilience is about community, and that justice is about action. As we step into 2026, let us carry forward these lessons to stay vigilant in our health, to demand equity in our institutions, to uplift marginalized voices, and to build communities rooted in love, accountability, and hope. This is not just the end of a year, it is the beginning of a renewed commitment to resilience, justice, and solidarity. I want to thank you all for being a part of America in Black and White. Together, we move forward into 2026 with courage and conviction. I want to thank each and every last one of you for being here tonight. This is so special, not just to this show, but to our communities and the people that we represent and the people that we want to show and know that there are truly superheroes out here in their communities amongst them that they do not know, but they get the opportunity to see that people are working on their behalf. So as we put in this work, as the people did before us, we too, as mentioned earlier tonight, we've got to bring these younger folk into the fold, help them to understand what is the thing that they have to do going forward and why this is important, especially when it comes to their civic rights. They have to understand the power of what it is to vote and why it's important to know that the issues that are important to you, you must stand up for. Because if you don't stand up for them, then who is going to do it for you? So as we come together to close out this wonderful year, I say we're going to start 2026 as a strong but powerful community that's going to make the changes and cause that good trouble that a lot of people don't want to hear or see, but they have no choice because we're not going to just let things be taken away from us and continue to be repressed. I thank each and every last one of you. We did a wonderful job. This show does not work unless people like you come here to let not only your stories be told, but to let people know that we're out here doing this fight. I thank y'all so much. And I want to tell you, I love 2025, but I'm definitely looking forward to 2026. And remember, we got a brand new segment, which is going to put us on the air 5 days a week. Final Word Fridays, which are going to be panels just like this, where we discuss the things that are important to us. Thank you all, and I will see you guys in 2026. I'm your host, Charles King, signing out. Happy New Year, everybody. Let's go do it.